he's gone through. I mean, he and the manager, we had long discussions and that, and we're finally here. So I mean, looking forward to it now.
I've got to ask you about Sven-Göran Eriksson. Did you know he was coming? Is that the reason you decided to sign him?
No, I mean, I've been speaking to Ian and the players about the manager's been top here. So I mean, it was all about the manager making me sign here. I mean.
When Lee Hughes called someone rubbish, he probably meant it. This is a bloke who turned every dressing room into a battleground, every disagreement into a grudge match, and every perceived slight into a personal war. Lee Hughes could score goals, no question about that. Over 300 in his career, but he could also score enemies faster than he could score tap-ins. His career wasn't just about finding the back of the net, it was about burning bridges, starting fights, and making sure everyone knew exactly what he thought of them. Today, we're diving into 5 footballers and 1 executive that Lee Hughes just couldn't stand. And trust me, if you're loving the drama already, go on, give this one some hype below. You'll see why it deserves it. Hughes was the kind of striker who could read a game brilliantly, but couldn't read a room to save his life. Talented? Absolutely. A nightmare to work with? Even more so. From wage wars to throat grabs, from dressing room meltdowns to handshakes of pure contempt, this is the story of a man who turned professional football into personal combat. Let's get into it. First up, Fabian de Freitas, the wage war that broke the dressing room. Picture this. Late 90s, West Bromwich Albion. Lee Hughes is absolutely flying. Local lad, Smethwick born and bred, scoring for fun, carrying the team on his back. He's not just a player, he's the club's cultural heartbeat. The fans worship him, the board relies on him. He's everything to West Brom. But here's the kicker. He's earning 1,400 quid a week. Now, that might sound decent, but hold on. Into this situation walks Fabian de Freitas, a Dutch striker signed to help push Albion into the Premier League. Big lad, talented, but inconsistent, the kind of continental import that was becoming fashionable in the second tier. And Fabian? He's on £5,000 a week, £5,000, nearly 4 times what Hughes is earning, for a player who wasn't even close to Hughes' level of output or importance. The wage gap wasn't just insulting, it was astronomical. Hughes was scoring the goals, dragging the team forward, living and breathing West Brom. De Freitas was squad rotation at best, and yet the Dutchman was taking home a fortune while Hughes scraped by on relative pennies. How did this come to light? Hughes' agent, Tony Hale, went nuclear. He didn't just whisper about it behind closed doors. He went public, revealing the exact numbers for everyone to see. 1,400 versus 5,000. The revelation sparked a major rift in the dressing room. Suddenly, everyone knew who was getting what, and the hierarchy looked completely broken. The club tried to defend it. Chairman Paul Thompson explained that players like de Freitas arrived as free agents, meaning the club was paying the transfer fee through the wages instead of a lump sum to another club. It made sense on a spreadsheet, but in the dressing room, it was poison. Hughes looked at de Freitas and saw everything he resented. Foreign imports getting rich while local heroes got exploited, players earning fortunes for doing less, a board that valued economics over loyalty. He couldn't stand the man, not for who he was, but for what he represented. De Freitas became a symbol of everything wrong with the system, and Hughes made sure everyone knew it. The animosity festered until Hughes finally had enough. In August 2001, he left for Coventry City in a £5 million move, finally getting the wages he deserved. But the damage was done. The De Freitas feud proved that once wage secrecy is shattered, the dressing room follows. Next, Jason Roberts, the Alpha Clash. If the feud with de Freitas was about money, the conflict with Jason Roberts was about territory. After de Freitas left, West Brom formed a new strike partnership, Hughes and Roberts. On paper, it was devastating. Hughes was the poacher, the finisher who lived in the 6-yard box. Roberts was the powerhouse, all hold-up play and physicality. Together, they should have been unstoppable, and statistically, they were. In the 2000 to 2001 season, they combined to drag Albion into the playoffs. In the semi-final against Bolton Wanderers, with the team trailing 2-0, both Roberts and Hughes scored to claw them back into the tie. They could play together, but they couldn't stand each other. The relationship was described as tense from the start. 2 alpha strikers competing for the same goals, the same spotlight, the same adoration from the fans. Hughes was the local hero, the Jack the lad with the volatile edge. Roberts was articulate, ambitious, professional. He wanted to be the main man, and so did Hughes. Neither was willing to take a back seat. Then came the Brierley Hill incident in late 2000. Hughes and Roberts were jointly questioned by police regarding an alleged assault on a man outside a pub. The case was dropped in September 2000 due to lack of evidence, but the damage was done. They were now linked in the public eye as troublemakers. For Roberts, who would go on to earn an MBE and become a respected broadcaster and community leader, being tied to Hughes's chaotic lifestyle must have been galling. For Hughes, the scrutiny only increased the pressure to outperform Roberts and prove his worth. The tension carried into training. Reports from the era describe arguments, a lack of social interaction, a partnership that functioned only on the pitch. When Hughes was sold to Coventry in 2001, Roberts immediately flourished as the sole focal point, only for injury to derail his progress. Their careers seemed destined to clash. They could score together, but they could never be together. And then there's the 2012 incident. Hughes was arrested at the Aerodrome Hotel in Croydon the night before a match against Sutton United. The charge was sexual assault, later dropped, and common assault, for which he was convicted. Roberts wasn't involved in this incident. He was playing for Reading at the time, a senior Premier League figure advocating for player rights. But the incident served as a thematic echo of their shared past. Another hotel, another altercation, another reminder that Hughes couldn't escape his own demons. By 2012, Roberts represented the legitimate, celebrated career path. Hughes represented chaos. He couldn't stand Roberts because Roberts was everything Hughes could have been if he hadn't kept sabotaging himself. Now, Derek McInnes and Phil Gilchrist. The dressing room war, the 2002 to 2003 season. West Brom are back in the Premier League under Gary Megson. It should have been a celebration. Instead, it turned into a brutal slog. The team was rigid, defensive, and desperately short of goals. Hughes had returned to the club from Coventry for £2.5 million, half what they'd sold him for. The pressure was immense. He was supposed to replicate his Division 1 form in the top flight. He didn't. And as the losses mounted, the dressing room fractured. The most powerful group was the leadership clique. Captain Derek McInnes, a Scottish midfielder, and defender Phil Gilchrist. These were Megson's enforcers, the grafters who embodied his disciplinarian code, and they had Lee Hughes in their sights. The flashpoint came after a critical 1-0 loss to Everton in 2003. Albion were staring at relegation. In the post-match inquest, McInnes and Gilchrist singled Hughes out. They claimed he wasn't pulling his weight, wasn't chasing lost causes, wasn't doing the dirty work required to survive. In Megson's system, a striker who didn't track back was a liability. But here's what they ignored. Hughes had been playing through the flu. He was ill, struggling, trying to contribute despite feeling dreadful. And instead of sympathy, he got scapegoated by a limited midfielder and a defender who were themselves part of a leaking defence. Hughes snapped, and he broke the cardinal rule. He took the dispute to the press. In a retort that became infamous locally, Hughes challenged the leadership group to say it to his face rather than whispering in corners or briefing the manager behind closed doors. It was a public declaration of war. Talent versus grafters. Star versus the system. McInnes, as captain, needed total buy-in. Hughes's individualistic approach and media posturing undermined everything he was trying to build. And Gilchrist? He was playing through considerable pain with a foot injury. He viewed his own sacrifice as greater than Hughes's flu complaints. To them, Hughes was a luxury player who didn't care enough. To Hughes, they were talentless journeymen looking for someone to blame for their own failings. The feud poisoned the atmosphere. It destroyed cohesion. It sealed Albion's relegation. The phrase "say it to my face" became a recurring taunt, a symbol of the breakdown in communication. Hughes couldn't stand McInnes and Gilchrist because they represented the rigid hierarchy he refused to submit to. He was a maverick in a system that demanded conformity, and they made sure he paid for it. Then there's Alan Hardy, the tunnel throttle. Now, it's important to be clear here. We're talking about Alan Hardy, the chief executive of Oldham Athletic, not the later Notts County owner. Hughes joined Oldham in 2007, straight out of prison. It was a controversial lifeline, a chance to rebuild. By 2009, the relationship had soured. The club, managed by Joe Royle, decided to offload Hughes to Blackpool on loan, and Hardy didn't just make the decision quietly. He went public. He justified the move by citing Hughes's poor form and high wages, saying if Joe wasn't going to use the player, there was no point in him sitting around doing nothing. Then he revealed that a lucrative new contract offer had been withdrawn, publicly devaluing Hughes, publicly humiliating him, turning him from star signing to financial burden in one press statement. Hughes didn't forget. On August 14, 2010, he returned to Boundary Park as a Notts County player. Notts County won 3-0. Hughes scored. Perfect vindication. And then, in the players' tunnel after the match, it all kicked off. Lee Hughes grabbed Alan Hardy by the throat. Not a shove, not a heated exchange. A full-on physical assault on a club executive. Violence between a player and a chief executive is almost unheard of in modern football. It signalled a total breakdown of professional norms. This wasn't heat-of-the-moment game rage. This was premeditated retribution. Hughes blamed Hardy for the manner of his exit, for the public comments about his wages, for the withdrawn contract. The 3-0 victory gave him the adrenaline and the excuse he needed to act on a year-old grudge. Most players shake hands after a grudge match. Hughes went for the neck. It cemented his reputation as a volatile figure who couldn't accept administrative authority, especially when that authority disrespected him. He could score goals, but he could never swallow his pride. Finally, the opposition snubs, the handshakes of judgment. This is where it gets really dark. After Hughes's 2004 conviction for causing death by dangerous driving, an incident where he fled the scene and left a man to die, he became a pariah. When he returned to football in 2007, he didn't just face abuse from fans chanting murderer, he faced something arguably worse. His fellow professionals, the men he shared pitches with, refused to acknowledge him. The pre-match handshake is a ritual of professional respect. It says we're colleagues, we're part of the same brotherhood. After his conviction, many rival players refused to shake his hand. They were making a statement. Hughes's crime had voided his membership. He was no longer a colleague. He was a criminal allowed to play on a technicality. Matches against Sheffield United and Preston North End were noted for their toxicity. Hughes noted in interviews how frequently he was snubbed. The refusal of peers to acknowledge him created a profound sense of isolation. By then, it wasn't one man he couldn't stand. It was the whole game. The players who snubbed him held a mirror to his past. They refused to let him compartmentalise, refused to let him pretend he was just a footballer. They reminded him every single week of what he'd done. Hughes responded with aggression, with mocking celebrations, with defiance. But underneath, the isolation cut deep. He couldn't stand these players because they wouldn't let him move on. They were reminders that his fairy tale career had been irrevocably stained. The microclimate of hate he played in from 2007 to 2015 was one of constant psychological siege, and every handshake refused was another nail in the coffin of his reputation. So there you have it, 5 feuds that defined Lee Hughes. Fabian de Freitas, the wage war that exposed economic injustice. Jason Roberts, the alpha clash and the ghost of shared legal baggage. Derek McInnes and Phil Gilchrist, the grafters who demanded conformity. Alan Hardy, the executive who felt the physical consequences of public humiliation, and the opposition snubs, the collective judgment that followed him onto every pitch. Every single one told the same story. Hughes versus everyone. He was a striker who could find space in any penalty box, but could never find peace in any dressing room. His talent was undeniable. Over 300 career goals. Cult status at West Brom, Notts County, Port Vale. But his temperament? That defined him more than any goal ever could. In football, Lee Hughes scored goals, but in life, he just kept scoring own goals. The feuds, the fights, the inability to coexist. It wasn't bad luck, it was a pattern of arrogance, of volatility, of self-sabotage. He could have been remembered as a legend. Instead, he's remembered as a warning, a cautionary tale about what happens when talent isn't matched with temperament, when ego overrides everything else. Look at what he left behind. Burnt bridges at every club, a criminal record that overshadowed 300 career goals, teammates who couldn't wait to see the back of him, executives he physically attacked, a game that froze him out. He wanted respect, demanded it even, but never understood that respect is earned through more than just goals. It's earned through decency, through professionalism, through being someone others actually want around. Hughes had the talent to be a Premier League regular for years. Instead, he spent his prime bouncing between lower leagues and prison cells, blaming everyone but himself. His legacy isn't inspiration, it's isolation. And in the end, that's all he had left.